We're moving into an exciting time in the epidemic between chapter 17 on 169 and 21. That's this week's reading. We'll go 4 or 5 chapters further next week. And we start off by no surprise, July of 1982. Start off in France because there's going to be a race between the French and the Americans to discover the virus. And so a lot of the people you meet, Willie Rosenbaum and a couple of other people, they really know what's going on here. They're really on top of the disease in France. And then Dale Lawrence, Bruce Evett, these CDC guys, it's all about blood transfusion. It's starting to rear its ugly head. That includes not only people who receive blood, but also hemophiliacs who receive blood products. So it's really starting to come together that it's very likely in the nation's blood supply. But of course, nobody's discovered a virus yet. So that's where we're at here. And then, as he mentioned, gays were worried about public relations and hemophiliacs were skittish about being involved with anything to do with the homosexuals. So when it gets in the bloods, the gay people are saying, you can't keep us from donating blood. And the hemophiliacs are saying, we can't get a gay disease. Everybody's kind of being genuinely stupid. Maybe that'll remind you about what's going on with COVID today. People aren't always at their best. And then a little bit about the media and how come nobody hears about it. Back to the NIH, Robert Gallo's lab. You're going to have a race between the Americans, Robert Gallo, and the French. And also Jay Levy out here at San Francisco. Dr. Levy is really a co-discoverer. He would have actually discovered it, but he couldn't get any money for the equipment he needed. So that's a really nasty twist and turn because he knew exactly what to look for to see if there was a virus. And university funds, money hassles, everybody's underfunded. A little bit of a shining light in the federal level. We're getting some money. And then, Schultz always wraps in people. So Gary Walsh is kind of a groundbreaking psychologist in San Francisco. A good friend of Joe Brewer's, friends of Randy Schultz. We get a little bit about Gary's failing health. And then we have new things, a transfusion patient here. And that brings the CDC into it. And then finally, we have an interesting thing. The first patient who dies of AIDS and donated blood. His death is August 6th. And very soon, Selma Dritz is going to find out that he donated blood to a baby who is dying of AIDS. So the plot thickens. We get the transfusion cases. Things start making sense. And then we move into the baby. In the next chapter, the baby who probably has AIDS. And it starts coming together, some gay meetings, gay politics. They're not doing much about AIDS. So it's, kind of disappointing at that time. So again, the book is going to cycle around between Larry Kramer, gay activist, trying to get things done in New York City, and the politics, and another gay conference, and nobody really coming together and doing anything, and understanding that maybe something really awful is happening, which it was. Probably by 1982, 40% of the gay people in New York and 20 or more percent in San Francisco were already infected with a virus that hadn't yet been discovered. And it's spreading. So time is really of the essence here. Back into Selma Dritz, our hero in San Francisco. She's basically expanding the definition of AIDS. Some of the first money coming with Bill Krause, who's going to talk with Philip Burton, very famous local politician, died long ago. But, he's going to say, I'm a congressman, let's ask for $15 million. And so we finally have some of the first money coming through. And also San Francisco funds the first clinic. So people are starting to respond bit by bit. a little bit more about, AIDS coming in with babies and blood transfusion. All this, it's spreading. It's getting much more scary. And then, more budget problems at the CDC kind of reminds me of today, actually. Always chronically underfunded. And comparison with the cyanide Tylenol death, how the country spent $100 million in 5 weeks to get to the bottom of it, and they can't even give $500,000 for AIDS right now. So it's really, 2 years into the thing, or a year and a half. Anyway, so we kind of move around, a little bit of comparison back in New York City, trying to get the city to respond because the deaths are piling up. And then what really gets kind of cool here is pay attention to this 193. This is how the Americans inspired the French. And the French, this is September or so of 1982, went back and started a European consortium, a group to research. And the race is on. Within a few months, the virus will be discovered. And then we're back into San Francisco, trying to get the city to respond. Everybody's talking goofy about it. Nobody wants to say it's the Castro district, the gay neighborhood. So one of the public health officials says, in the central part of the city, 1% of gay men have been diagnosed with AIDS. What central part? A central part of the city. Nobody wants to say it. People are trying to protect people's feelings. And of course, if anything, you'd want people to be scared spitless by that time. And so we're kind of back and forth. Selma Dreetz will find the first case of blood transfusion, and because she knows San Francisco very well. And then we move on to Gayton Dugas, a little bit more. Randy Shilts turning him into a monster, even though he has nothing to base this on. And a little bit of a scene with Gayton and the doctors. And then we have a little scene here where the doctors, Paul Volberding dreams he's dying of it. Other doctors worry about it. So they're all kind of, and they're trying to figure it out. Why do heroin addicts, hemophiliacs, Haitians, and homosexuals, why are they getting AIDS? I remember a friend asking me that in 1982. How come these people, homosexuals, heroin addicts, hemophiliacs, and Haitians, all I could come up with is, well, they're not invited to most parties, but that wasn't the best answer. Anyway, it was a mystery to everybody why those 4 people were getting sick, 4 groups of people. Then we have Gayton Dugas again, Randy Shilts inventing him more and more. More death, Gary Walsh falling sick, and more about blood, about what are we going to do about it? And then Gayton Dugas again having an argument with Selma Dreetz. That's also in that 60 Minutes clip from last essay. So it just kind of keeps spreading around, bringing in people's reactions, bringing in doctors' reactions, trying to get Robert Gallo to research it. And then what's really exciting here about 201, 202 is it's fascinating. By November, Gallo made what would prove to be among the most important decisions of his career. He gave up. He was so close to discovering AIDS. He gave up in November. And, the people in Paris didn't give up. And so we have the French moving closer to discovering it. Chapter 21, similar things, local politics. Dianne Feinstein was our mayor then. She's our senator now. She gets into a little bit of trouble, and there's a political blowback. But people need her because she's the one who will sign off on the funding for AIDS. So it gets a little bit thick with local politics. Back about blood banks, lots more about blood banks. Selma Dreetz, our hero on the trail. And so it just keeps moving and moving and moving. More people, the doctors are getting closer. And then we have a political campaign against Mayor Feinstein. And then Gaten Dugas gets asked to leave town. I don't know if that's true or not, but nonetheless, and then back into Bill Krause losing a good friend. AIDS is getting closer to him, and more people getting sick. San Francisco and New York. And some people in the gay community saying, hey, don't kid yourself. In fact, there's one of my favorite lines is that, it's if going to the baths is really a game of Russian roulette, then the advice must be to throw the gun away, not merely to play less often. So you get some gay people, even before they discover the virus, who are saying, hey, look out, watch it. This thing is an STD. Nobody listens, but this is New York, and you've got roughly 40% of the gay people are already infected before the virus is discovered. So it's the usual crazy, ugly story. Back to the CDC, blood donors, what are we doing? Joe Brewer, Gary Walsh, getting sicker, getting weaker. And finally, we have babies are getting AIDS too, which kind of spreads it further. So it keeps growing, it keeps moving, and we're getting close to discovering the virus itself. So it's really kind of an exciting time. It's also a scary time because, neck and neck with the discovery coming closer, you have virtually no funding on the federal level, and people are dying right and left. The numbers are picking up quicker and quicker, and nobody's responding in the right way. So that's about where we go for this week. But keep in mind, right after this, very famous things happen in Paris in the beginning of 1983. That'll be some of next week's reading, but it's it is the most exciting thing that happened in the first years of the epidemic. So I'll leave it at that. I'm just kind of giving you a talking overview, but try to read everything and then respond narrowly to the discussion questions I have, because they're theme-based. But as you read the story, you get a feeling of the people involved at the time, what the gay community was doing, what the CDC people were doing, what the doctors in the know were finding, and also, especially with this, what happens in January 3rd, 1983, it all happens with this lymph node in Paris that's going to go under a microscope. So we're getting really close here. It should be a pretty exciting time with this. I hope you enjoy it.